So it's me and you. Once again, we're going to start with the Mishnah, but we already did a thing. Just as a reminder, there are 3 kabbanis when we talk about Kabbalah Yontif. First of all, you have to come up and see when you have to do the regel. That's Riyah. Together with that, you have to bring an Oilas Riyah. An Oila that's a Riyah. Because it's a happy, joyful time, you have to bring a Shalmei Simcha at the same time. And third, there is the Karban Chagigah. There is a machlokes whether the Shalmei Simcha and the Chagigah are in reality one, because they're both Shlamim and they're both for putting meat on your table, or are they 2 separate things? That's one. Number 2, with Riyah, is there a mitzvah to go up and to do a pilgrimage to come up for the Shalosh Regalim, and separate from that to bring an Oilas Riyah, or in fact it's all one thing? You come up and you bring, and together that is called Riyah. Okay, those are questions. The Rishonim are busy with that. Either way, it's buried within the language of the Mishnah, as we discussed on Friday. Here we go. Hakol Chayev B'Riyah. All are Chayev to come up to the base of Mikdash, and possibly this also means to bring an Oilas Riyah. Chutz, except for Mecheresh Shaita V'Kotin, a deaf, somebody whose mind went out of him, a Shaita V'Kotin. V'Tumtim, somebody of uncertain sexual orientation, meaning there is a membrane covering the sexual organs. V'Adrogenes, and somebody who has both. V'Noshim V'Avodim Shenim Meshucharim, and women and Avodim who are not freed, because women who are not slaves that are not freed have the rule of women. They have to keep the mitzvahs of the Torah like women. Achigar, a lame person, V'Asuma, a blind person, V'Achayla, somebody who's sick, V'Hazokein, and an older person who's outside of a chayla, of somebody who's sick, but is more like the next line, who's not capable of going up to the Azara, to the courtyard with his legs. Ezu, so the Gemara now starts getting into each one of the particulars here. I mean the Mishnah. Ezu cotton, any child that can't even get a piggyback ride, and to go up from Yerushalayim to Harabais. In other words, he can't hold his balance on his father's shoulders as they're going up the mountain from Yerushalayim to the Harabais.
Where are you saying?
We're right in the middle of the Mishnah, Daddy. We're up to Beis Hillel. We started again at the Mishnah at the beginning of the Masechta.
The beginning of the Masechta?
Yeah, you remember on Friday we started it and we said we're going to go back to the beginning.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So now we're up to Beis Hillel Oimrim. Beis Hillel Oimrim. Kol she'ena yachol la'oichiz biyodei shel aviv ula'alos miyushlayim le'barabait. This is a bit more. It's not that he's capable of getting a piggyback ride. He has to be capable of walking on his own 2 feet. The child has to be able to hold his father's hand or his grandfather's hand and walk with him and have the strength and the stamina to go up the mountain from Yerushalayim up the Arabayis into the Azara. So Beis Hillel is ruling is a little tougher than Beis is a little more lenient in the sense of that he expands the version of what a cotton is. Shenema, why? Shalosh regalim. Now, regalim means a regal, means a holiday, but regalim also means legs. 3 legs, 3 feet. Your 2 and his. In other words, everybody needs to stand on their own 2 feet. Beishama Yoimrim, Hariyah. Now, this would be the carbon Riyah. Everybody agrees this is the carbon Riyah. Whether this is separate from the mitzvah of coming up, I shall see all of your males. Is this separate? Meaning there's a mitzvah to come up, and then there's a separate mitzvah to bring a carbon, an oil Riyah, or it's really all one. You come up, and part of coming up is bringing an oilas Riyah. So that's the question. Okay, but regardless, this is definitely talking about the carbon, the oilas Riyah. The Shabbat Yomin, Hariyah Shtei Kesef has to be a minimum value of 2 silver. The Chagigah Mo, and the Chagigah only needs to be 1. Now, what about the carbon Shalmei Simcha? You'll notice it dropped out over here because carbon Kabbalah Shalmei Shalmei Simcha. That seems to have dropped out. Now that seems to be a little, what do you call it? That seems to be a little fishy over here, and we'll have to deal with it.
I think
But-
the answer is because the Shalom Simcha can be, you could be Yotze with the Chagigah.
So that's what we talked about before. Is it two separate carbons, or in fact, it's really one carbon,
Right.
one shlomim that doubles as a Shalmei Simcha and a Shalmei Chagigah. And that again is a machlokes rishonim and gigangin. So anyways, but let's leave it over here. I'm just pointing out the incongruities that are in the Mishnah, where the Mishnah is unclear, and clearly we have to get a better understanding of it. The Chagigah toik mar kesef, 1 silver. They still learn just the opposite. Hariyah mar kesef. The oilas riyah is only 1 silver. The Chagigah shtei kesef, and it's possible the reason why he says that Chagigah is shtei kesef because Beis Hillel holds that the carbon Shalmei Chagigah and the Shalmei Simcha are really two separate kabbanas, each one requiring a more kesef, and it's combined within the idea of a Chagigah because in essence it's the same carbon. So which one it is, obviously inquiring minds want to know, and as we work through the Gemara, hopefully we get some clarity. Zok the Gemara. Compared, the Mishnah starts with the word hakol. Every time it starts with the word hakol, it's coming to add something. Hakol liyasuye mai. What's it coming to include? Liyasuye, to include somebody to be mechayiv in the mitzvah of riyah. Somebody who's a half and half. Half the time he's free, and half the time he has to work. So Sunday and Tuesday he works for somebody. Monday and Wednesday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday he works for a master. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday he works for himself. Says the Gemara, is part from a which, by the way, the Rambam paskins this way. To be free means to be completely free. Half free is only halfway there. You're not free yet. Potam in a real. Hakol yisuyamai. What? Who's it coming to add? Says the Gemara. Last chiga b'yom rishon nispasha b'yom sheni. To include somebody who's lame on the first day, but the next day of Yontif, he's already healed. And he's got to come, he has a chiyuv, he has a chiyuv of Riyah on the second day. Okay? That means if the first day he was potter because he was lame, but he heals overnight, then on the second day of Yontif, he has to come up. What would be your Hava Amina as not? It is Yontif, so if you couldn't come the first, come the second day. Says the Gemara. This is good according to the Mandiyama that the Kabbanis have a tashlumim from day to day. In other words, the carbon Chagigah, and in this case, the carbon, the Oilas Riyah, have, if you don't bring it the first day, you can bring it, you can make it tashlumin. You can go ahead and what do you call it? And it could be you can be mashlamit. You
bring it the next day.
You could use it the next. I'm trying to find the right English word for the word tashlumin.
To repay.
To repay. Thank you.
Repay.
To repay. So my father's word is the perfect word. You were supposed to bring it on the first day. You didn't bring it on the first day. You blew it. So you could repay what you didn't bring on the first day on day 2 through 7. This is on Pesach, this is on Sukkot, and it's even on Shavuos, which is only 1 or 2 days. You still can go ahead in a whole week because it's compared to all the other regalim. Right. Okay? But remember that word my father just used, repay. Because that means the first day you can repay it further on. Everything is a repayment of the first day, which means I was mechuyev, I was required to bring the carbon on the first day, and I blew it. So I can now repay the other days. But if I was not mechuyev, I was not required to bring it the first day. If I was chas v'sholem lame, if the person was lame on the first day, right?
Yeah.
If he was lame on the first day, it's shot that he never was mechuyev in bringing the carbon in the first place. So there's no tashlumim, there's no repay. It's one thing to say that each day is like a day of Yom Tov. So it's the word repay is the word. Tashlumim means to pay, not to repay, to pay. If I didn't bring it the first day, I paid to do the second day. But if the first day, if the whole thing of the extra days is merely a repayment of having had a mitzvah to bring it the first day, and you didn't, so I'm repaying what I didn't do the first day. But if I didn't have any mitzvah on the first day, I was not required because the person was
nothing to repay. Yeah.
There's nothing to repay. So what's the hakol asuye mai? What's it coming to be asuye? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Now take a look at the second to last Tosfos on the page. Tashlumin derishon. Va'af al gav degabe Chagigah. Who diksiv tashlumin regarding the yontiv Chagigah? It says tashlumin, meaning that means you got all 7 days. Mikol makayim. Yalfin and Ria Mine included Talshumin Derishon. That from Ria might only be a Talshumin of the first day, a repay of the first day. And here he was not responsible. The person was still lame. So therefore there was no mitzvah of the first day. Since he had no responsibility on the first day, right? Since Taisa says he had no responsibility the first day because he was lame, so there was no mitzvah. But then he has no responsibility on the second day, even if he heals. And then, of course, it would be obvious that he would not be responsible. So says the Gemara, back to the Gemara. The word hakol is coming for something else. Suma ba'achas be'enov, right? That he's only a person who was like a Moshe Dayan, was blind in one eye, that you might think that you didn't have to come up and Ria and see the Beis Hamikdash. The answer is yes, you do. The law, right, says the Gemara, yes, you do. Udaloi ki haitana. It's not, in fact, like this other Tan. The Tanya Yochanan ben Dahavi Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Suma ba'achas me'ena potur min ariya is in fact potur from seeing. So Moshe Dayan obviously paskin like this Gemara. He saw nothing of the base of the Temple Mount. Shenema Yireh the pasuk says Yeroeh. You shall see, you shall see. In the way, in other words, in the way that Hashem comes to the Beis Hamikdash to see his pilgrims, i.e., complete, Hashem is complete, so do you have to come complete with 2 eyes. Right? Just as Hashem, as it were, comes to see with 2 eyes, right? And so too, you have to see Hashem with 2 eyes. Look at the bottom Tosfos. The bottom Tosfos, Pirish Rashi. With his 2 eyes. Not that I said as eyes, but you get the idea. Now, what it calls now, Rabbeinu Tam doesn't like this. There's no such thing as coming, that the Eibishter is coming. The Eibishter is everywhere. because the whole world is his, right? What do you call it? Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. V'oy the darish v'sayris kaidem adarabo. Havilay lidros mikra kaidem akarcha garis avenu tam. Yeroi mal liros b'shnei einov sha'adam bol ha'aretz lifnei ha'makayim b'shnei einov sha'makayim av sha'adam liros b'makayim b'shnei einov v'loy domi lavid avoido. So in other words, he just says it's got to do with people. You got to go ahead. A person sees with two eyes. In short, the bottom line is that according to this man, the somebody who's blind in one eye has no mitzvah of Riyah. Our Mishnah comes to say we don't hold like this Tana. With one eye, you can do Riyah. Okay, we're now on 2A3.
Meaning he's put to bring the korban, but he still has mechuyev to be oil regel.
And he may have to bring the korban, Daddy.
No.
If I hold that Riyah is tied to the korban, he would have to bring the korban. Sure. Of course he would.
No, but it says yire yeroeh. You have to see the Rabban the same way that the Rabban sees you.
But that's only according to this mandama. Remember what the Gemara says.
Yeah, I'm saying even according to that Tana, maybe you're put from the korban, but you still have to go to be oil regel.
Yeah, but it doesn't. That's not pushing how they're learning the Gemara. Rashi and everybody else.
It's two separate things.
Right, the Gemara, but Pashat, Rashi, and everybody else is not looking at what it called. It's talking about seeing and not bringing the korban.
Right.
If you look at the Rashis on the side, it's talking about seeing and not the korban. Yeroy, look at Rashi of the exhibit. Kareedin Yeroy, calls the kurkas pnei adoin. The mashma sha'adam royes ashchino Yeroy calls the kurkas pnei adoin mashma sha'adam bol lirois hekish hakotzil riyosay.
Yeah, just like he sees Kavyochel with both eyes, so right. You should see him with both eyes
with
too.
Both eyes. That's it, and that's real going up. So anyway, says the Gemara 1:283. Like we explained in the beginning, that we're dealing with a half Eved and a half free man. But the Kasha the Rabino, you asked on Rabino who says the Rabino said is potter from coming up to see. Says the Gemara like Kasha. Kam the Mishnah Rishayna. This ruling there, the ruling there later in the Mishnah is understood by Rabina, goes with Rabbi Beis Hillel's initial teaching. Kan the Mishnah Riachroina. This goes with the later teaching of Beis Hillel. To Beis Hillel changed its mind and agreed with Beis Shammai. And here we go. One was a half a slave and a half a free. Oy beres Rabbi, who works for his master one day and for himself another day. Divrei Beis Hillel. Amru lohem Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, and we're now on Amid Beis, 2b1. Tekantam es Rabbi. You have completely you've made it great for the master. But you have not solved the problem for the half slave. Because a slave is not allowed to marry a regular Yisraelis, a regular Jewish girl. So now look what happened over here. The master is at least getting 3 days a week. He's getting free work, right? He's getting free labor. But what about the half slave and half free man? Lisa Shivcha and Yachol. He's not going to marry a slave woman because half of him is a free man. Bas Chayrin Eina Yachol. He's not going to marry a free woman because half of him is a slave. Libatel, so should he just not be married at all? The world was only created to have children. Hashem did not create the world to be desolate. He meant it to be inhabited. Except for the case of tikkun or the betterment of society. Koifin as Rabbi. We hit the rock, we hit the master, We force the master, and we make him into a free man completely. Because in fact, as a free man, he goes from being mechuyev in mitzvahs ki isha, to being required to do mitzvahs like a woman, to becoming a full-fledged zachar and mechuyev to be mekayim in all 613 mitzvahs. And to compensate for the owner's loss, the slave has to write a note for half of his value of what he's worth. And Beis Hillel subsequently reversed itself to agree with Beis Shammai. So therefore, a chatzi eved, a chatzi ben chayrin, a half a eved and a half a free person is yes mechuyev in riyah, because Bezdin is going to compel the master to free him anyways. Says the Gemara further, chutz mi cheresh shayt v'katan, except for a cheresh, a deaf person, a deranged person, and a minor. What is a cheresh? And this question of what is a cheresh is what we call a shas sugya. It's an argument found all over Shas. To Ketani, the Mishnah taught, cheresh dumya d'shayt v'katan. A cheresh is a deaf person that's similar to a deranged person and a minor. Just like they are not mentally competent, so to the cheresh is someone who's not mentally competent. Become ashmalon, it's not. And the Mishnah is teaching us what we learned in another Mishnah, in Terumas. The deaf person of which the Chazal talks about all over the place, that says he's incompetent, someone who's completely mute, who cannot hear and cannot speak. One who speaks but cannot hear, or who could hear but cannot speak. Chayiv is chayiv to be in oilus regel. Tanina lahadu tanu rabbanan. In fact, this is what we learned in a brayso. Somebody who speaks but cannot hear, zeu cherish. That's a cherish. Shemeya v'eina medaber zeu ilay. One who can hear but cannot speak is called an ilay. Inside the cherish, inside the ilam, are considered mentally competent for all of their affairs. So there you see, they're not compared to Shaita V'Kat. We're on 2B2. 2B2. But why do you know that one who speaks and cannot hear is called a cheresh, and shemei v'ein medaber, somebody that could hear but cannot speak, is called an elaim? Zeu elaim. Because the pasuk says, "V'ani kecheresh lo yeshma." I am like a deaf person, I do not hear. And like a mute, I will does not open his mouth. Okay, it's a pasuk in Tehillim.
So you see that any medaber is
an elaim. Is an elaim. The iba is saying the amri inchi, like people say, is takel milule. Speech was taken from him, and that's what it is. So says the Gemara from the Mishnah in Teruma is medaber ve'eni shemeya, one who speaks who cannot hear. Shemeya ve'eni medaber, who can hear but cannot speak, is chayiv in all the mitzvahs, and which would include oila regel, to go up, to be seen in the base of Mikdash. But Tanya, we learned in another brayso, medaber ve'eni shemeya, somebody who speaks but cannot hear. Shemeya ve'eni medaber, who can hear but cannot speak. Potter is potter from oilus regalim, from coming up to the regel. So there's something missing in our Mishnah, and this is what it's really coming to teach. All are obligated in the midst of appearing and of joy. Okay, the Shalmei Simcha. Okay, the Shalmei Simcha. Except for a cheresh who speaks but cannot hear, and who hears but cannot speak. Shupatam in Ariya, Apapi Shupatam in Ariya, but even though he's potter from appearing and the offering of the Oilas Riyah, the Pashtus, That's what it seems to be talking about. If you take a look, right, that's the art scroll. But he's exempt from the mitzvah of appearing and offering an oiless riyah. Both. But chayiv b'simcha. He is chayiv in rejoicing in the shalmei simcha offerings of the shalmei simcha and the chagigah. Somebody who's completely deaf, who does not hear or speak, even from rejoicing, because they are not mentally competent. Except for a deaf who could speak but can't hear, who could hear but can't speak. Even though he's brought from Riyah, appearing. And the offering, the Oilas Riyah. We're now on today's daf, Gimel. Gimel Omid Aleph. Gimel Omid Aleph 3A1. Chayiv b'simcha. He's chayiv in the mitzvah of rejoicing the Simchas Chagigah, as Rashi says on the top of Gimel Omid Aleph. As Rashi says on the top of Gimel Omid Aleph, L'smoyach b'chag d'ksiv v'samachta b'chagecha. And as the Gemara is going to say a little later on Daf Ches, the simcha b'shlomim la'oicha l'sabocha. So this is what we have to learn, but this is what we're talking about. But there's she'ena shemeya v'loy medaber, one who neither hears nor speaks. V'shaita v'katan, katan min simcha hoil v'potim kol mitzvah smurim b'Torah, because he's potim from all mitzvahs in the Torah. So now, take the Gemara, the obvious question. The Gemara asks, Ma'ishanol, the Indian Riyah, why with regard to Riyah, the Patri, those who are either deaf or mute are exempt. Ma'ishanol, the Indian Simcha, why in the case of rejoicing, the Mechayev, they are Mechayev? Why are you picking and choosing? Says the Gemara, the Indian Riyah, Gama Riyah Mehakel. We have a Gezer Shabbat from the din of Hakel. Once every 7 years, there's a mitzvah of Hakel to gather everybody, men, women, children, to hear the king read from Devarim. Diksiv over there in Parshas Vayelech, and in some Vayelech, Hakel esom anoshim v'adoshim v'yatav. Gather the people, the men, the women, and the small children. And regarding right before it, it says, when all of Klal Yisrael comes to appear before Hashem, i.e. on Sukkot, we read it on Sukkot. How do you know from what you just said that a cheresh is exempt? It seems to be that everybody is not exempt. Everybody's got to appear. So how do you know a cheresh is exempt? Because it's written over there. Laman yishmu ulaman yilmudu. So they will hear and they will learn. V'tanya laman yishmu prata medaber ben shemeya. This comes to exclude one who speaks but cannot hear. Laman yilmudu is one who prata shmaya ben medaber, who hears but cannot speak. Lameda dechiloi mishtoy legoma. But is it a fact that one who cannot speak cannot learn? There were two mutes who resided in Rebbe's neighborhood. The sons of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgoda's daughter, or the sons of Rabbi Yochanan's sister. So maybe possibly Reish Lakish's sons, possibly. I don't know, because Reish Lakish was the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. When Rebbe would come to the yeshiva, they would enter and sit down before him, right in front of him, so they can see his mouth. And they would nod their heads and move their lips as Rebbe gave his shir. Ultimately, Rebbe davened for Rachmanis that they should be on their behalf, because he saw that they were such good boys. The Itaisu, and they were taka healed. And then when they started speaking, look what poured out of their mouth. It turned out that they were well versed in halacha rulings, in the Sifra, in the Sifri, and the entire Mishnayos, the six orders of the Mishnayos. So therefore, a mute can learn. The pasuk should be read so that they will teach. Since they cannot speak, it's impossible for them to teach, and that's what we're talking about. Rabbi Vade, that's exactly what it means. Vade laman yalameduhu. It means to be teach. It means to be interpreted that so that you will teach, so that they will teach. The isakadatach laman yilmedu, so that they will learn. And therefore we're on 382, that since the person cannot learn, and since he cannot hear, he cannot learn. This could be learned from this, so they will hear. Since they can't hear, I know they can't learn. It certainly means so that they will teach. And since they cannot talk, even though they can learn, since they cannot talk, they cannot teach, they don't have to come up for the real. Somebody who's deaf in one ear, potter min ariyah, is potter from riyah. And in fact, we paskin this way. Shenema ba'ozneim, because it says in their ears. So Freitag Gemara says, "V'hai ba'ozneim," it says Shenema ba'ozneim, in their ears. Ears is two ears, not one ear. So deaf in one ear, you potter from coming up for riyah. Okay? V'hai ba'ozneim b'boilei, but we need the word ba'ozneim to teach us ba'ozneim the Kula Yisrael, that the king's recital must be read to all the ears of all of Klal Yisrael, the entire nation has to come. Says the Gemara, Ahu mineged kol Yisrael nafka. That you learn from the words before all of Israel. So right, the Gemara, mineged kol Yisrael haba mina afagav deloy shemiah. I would have thought even those who do not actually hear the recital, who are deaf, what do you call it? They have to come up and be there for Hakel in the Azara. They wrote only those who can actually hear. So says the Gemara, no, they will hear. So the law regarding Hakel, you learn from Laman Yishmu that they will hear. The rule for real, for coming up on the Regel is for Ba'osneya. In fact, this rule, everybody, applies today. We paskin that one who is deaf in one ear is not mechuyev in regel. What happens, Daddy, for shofar blowing? Yeah. Mr. Lowenthal, Rabbi Lowenthal, Zechreinu Levracha, as you know, the last 10, 15 years of his life, he wore hearing aids. Right. Reb Shia used to make him take out a hearing aid. Because if you can't hear the shofar without a hearing aid, is it called hearing? And if you're not mechuyev in hearing, you can't blow the shofar. Because only somebody that's mechuyev in shofar could be mighty somebody else in shofar. So this Gemara has practical applications in today's world. Amar Rav Tanchum. Okay, we're making good timing over here. It looks like we're going to catch up. Amar Rav Tanchum. Chagigah b'regel yachas. If one is lame in one foot, potter min ariyah is potter from riyah. Shenema regalim. 2 legs, 2 feet. So practically, you can't learn from there. V'haregalim iboyle prat lebali kabin. That comes to teach us somebody who has 2 legs, but one of those legs was amputated, and he has a wooden peg leg. That's not called a leg, even though he's walking on 2 feet. Says the Gemara, Mahu mi pa'amim nafka. That's from the word pa'amim. Now, the word pa'amim means times, right? So the Pasha means 3 times. Shalosh pa'amim mashana. 3 times in the year you have to make a pilgrimage. But it also has a different meaning. The Tanya pa'amim shalosh pa'amim mashana 3 times during the year. But ain't pa'amim ela regalim. In fact, the connotation of pa'amim could also mean feet. The pasuk says in Yeshaya, Timisena rogel ragle oni pa'ame dalim, and the foot will trample it, the feet of the pauper, the soles of the needy. Okay, that's what it's talking about. And it says further in Shirat Shirim, how lovely are your footsteps in sandals, O daughter of the noble. Okay? That means when they were coming up to the Oil Regal, you were coming up with your feet, your footsteps. We're on 3A3. So Pa'amim also has a connotation of feet. So now we said this is a beautiful pasuk, and now we get into Agadita. Dorish Rabba, how lovely are your footsteps and sandals, O daughters of the noble. Kam and Noim Ragleim Shel Yisrael. How lovely are the footsteps of Klal Yisrael. B'shor Sho'ilim L'Regel, as they ascend Yerushalayim to go up to the base of English to celebrate the Yontif. Bas Nediv, daughter of the noble. Pita Shel Avraham Avinu Shenikra Nediv. She's the daughter of our forefather, our grandfather Abraham, who's called the noble. The nobles of the nation gathered, the nation of the God of Abraham. Does this mean that Hashem is the God of Abraham, but not the God of Yitzchak and Yaakov? He's the God of Abraham because he's the forerunner of all Gerim, of all prophets. So in other words, he was the one that led everybody to convert and to believe in the one God, and that's it. And that is very simple. What is it? What does a Ger do? He leaves his old life behind and comes to join Judaism. Same thing with Oila Regalim. You leave your home and you come out and you leave your home to go up to Yerushalayim to come to the house of Hashem. So there's a similarity. That's why it's called the Lekei Abraham. Amar Rav Kahana, since we just brought a few members from Rav Tanchum, we're now going to bring some other famous members, famous Shikluch Torah from Rav Tanchum. Okay? Amar Rav Kahana, Dorish Rav Nosson Bar Man Yomi, Mishum Rav Tanchum, Rabbi Tanchum, what does it say with regard to the pit in which Yosef was thrown into by his brothers? The pit was empty, it had no water in it. When you already say that the pit was empty, don't I know that there was no water? There was no water. Rashi brings it over there. But snakes and scorpions were in it. So now, a beautiful drasha I think you can make over here. Mayim is Torah, right? Ein Mayim ela Torah, right? Water, Torah is compared to Mayim. And what it's saying by, if it's a bar rake, if the pit is empty, if your head is empty, Ein by Mayim, it has no water, then you know what it's going to be filled with? It's going to be filled with Noshim V'Akravim. It's going to be filled with Noshim V'Akravim. And the reason why I think this is it, because look at the next piece of Gemara. Tanu Rabbanon, Ma'isa B'Rabbi Yochanan, B'Roike B'Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma, B'Rabbi Elazar Chisma. Shaholchu L'Kabel P'nei Rabbi Yeshua B'Pekiyin. They went to visit Rabbi Yeshua in Pekiyin. Amar Lahen, Rabbi Yeshua said to them, I wasn't able to make it to the yeshiva. What novelty did they teach today in the yeshiva? So Amar Lai, they said to him, we are your students. From your waters of Rishaysin we drink. This is the reason why I think there's a connection between this Gemara and that Gemara. We are your Talmidim, and we're full with your waters of Torah, right?
Yeah.
So he said like this, Amal Lahem. So Rabbi Yeshua said to him, like this, Abba became, even though it's not possible to go to yeshiva and not come back with a novel teaching. Shabbos Shami Hoysa. Whose week was it to lecture? Shabbos Shal Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Hoysa. They told me it was the Shabbos ben Elazar ben Azariah. What's going on over here? Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi, but Rabbi Gamliel was a tough Nasi. He had a lock on the door of the Beis Medrash, and he didn't let everybody in unless you paid money. So you showed that you didn't take the Torah easy, that the Torah had value to you. You had to pay in to come to the Beis Medrash and learn.
Not only that, he only accepted only those that was Toicha Kebaro.
All right, explain. Yeah. Only those who were inside and outside were one. In other words, he only accepted the top students.
The top, right.
The top students. Anyways, the short and long of it was that there was a big revolt against Rabbi Gamliel. And believe it or not, they removed him. And now they were looking for a new one. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was 18 years old at the time. And they pointed the 18-year-old as the new Nasi. And that's when famously Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's beard turned white. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, like we say in the Haggadah, I am like 70 years old, that his beard turned white so that he should get a little respect. Anyways, the side of the thing was they felt bad for Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel felt bad. And what happened was when Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah threw open the doors, the Beis Medrash got completely full. Everybody started showing up, and it was an unbelievable Kol Torah. They were pasking shilas, and they were arguing in Torah. It was a beautiful thing, and that literally changed the way Torah would be taught from that point on. And Rabbi Gamliel himself agreed to this. Rabbi Gamliel himself, and he chilled out because he also had gotten into a thing with Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua had said one day was Yom Kippur. Rabbi Gamliel said another day was Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Gamliel made Rabbi Yeshua walk to him with a stick on Yom Kippur. And people got really upset with that. Anyways, it was the week of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So it ended up that Rabbi Gamliel would give shir 3 weeks a month. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would give shir 1 week a month. So they said this was the 1 week of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And what was the topic? So they told Rabbi Yeshua, the Pashas Hakel. We were talking about Hakel. What were they darishing? Says Hakel, Rabbi Elazar first said the pasuk. Hakel is anoshim v'tam. Gather together the people, the men, the women, and the small children. Then Rabbi Elazar started learning it off. Said if the men came to learn noshim boyis l'shmoya, then the women who don't have a chiyuv to learn simply came to hear in order to know better how to do the mitzvahs. Taf lama boyin. Why do the kids have to come? By the way, look at the second to last taisvis. The second to last taisvis, noshim l'shmoya, Amar b'Yerushalmi, that this Gemara is the loy ben Azai. The Amar Chayiv Adam Lumay Lebitoy Torah. Ben Azai holds you have a chiyuv to teach you toward his Torah. This is according to the man the Amar that you don't have a chiyuv to teach you toward his Torah. Noshim boys l'shmaya. Taf lama bayit. Why do the small children have to come? Why do the children say? Says the Gemara Kedei Tin Schalim in order to give a reward to those who bring them. And take a look at the bottom Rashi, everybody. Jerry, Daddy, look at the bottom Rashi. It's a famous Taisvis. The bottom Taisvis. Kedei litein schalav neim, in order to get reward for bringing them. Va'al zed samchu. And on this we rely. Lehevi ketanim bebeis haKnesses, to bring children to shul.
It's a chinuch.
But on this we're relying on it, even though they make noise and everything else. You see, by Hakel they brought him, but you can make a diuk in Taisvis. Taisvis says Beis HaKnesses. He doesn't say Beis HaMedrash. You can bring little children to shul. It doesn't mean that you can bring little children to the shir that you're having in learning. That's different. That's different. Anyways, Amalan, Rabbi Yeshua said to him, Magolius Toiva Oisim Yetchem. A precious stone you had in your hand was in your hand. And you sought to withhold it from me. This is a beautiful shtickle Torah that you get a reward just for bringing children to the thing. That's a reward in itself. It's a major chiddush. What are you telling me? Why are you just why are you trying to withhold it? Now, V'oi Dorish, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah on that day went ahead and expanded further. As Hashem and Marta Hayoy, you have praised Hashem today. That's one pasuk in Devarim. Ve'es v'Hashem imcha Hayoy, and Hashem has praised you today. So we're praising to Hashem, and Hashem is praising us. Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu liYisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Klal Yisrael, you have made me a unique praise in the world because you have declared me the one and only God. And I will make you a subject of unique praise in the world. You have made me a unique praise in the world, except Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem Echad, Hashem is the one and only. Shenema, now we're on Amid Base, 3B1. We got about another 10 minutes. Who's like the people of Yisrael, a unique nation on the earth. And this has to do with Shabbos. We say this on Shabbos. Go take a look if you want to see this. Right? Look at the top Tosfos. Look at the top Tosfos on Amid Base. Give them Amid Base 3B1. Amina b'medrash shloishim me'idim zeh zeh. Yisrael v'Shabbos v'Kudsha B'richu. Yisrael v'Kudsha B'richu me'idim al Shabbos testify regarding the Shabbos to Yom Menucha, that it's a day of rest. Yisrael v'Shabbos, Klal Yisrael and the Shabbos testify al Kudsha B'richu shu echad, that he's one and only, unique. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shabbos Al Yisrael, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Shabbos testify about Klal Yisrael shehein yechidim b'umas, that they are unique among the nations. V'alzeh simcha loymar, and this is why we are saimech to say by mincha on Shabbos, Ata echad v'shimcha echad u'mika amcha Yisrael kol echad b'aretz. Even though the Shabbos, even though that's not talking about the Inyone Diyayma of Shabbos, like by Ma'ariv on Friday night and Shachas and Musaf by day. The Mincha is not the Ata Echad V'Shimcha Echad, has got nothing to do with Shabbos. But since it's Shabbos that's coming to testify about us, and we are and Shabbos testifies with us that Hashem is one, and Shabbos testifies with Hashem that we are unique, that we keep the Shabbos. The Mela we say it by Mincha. Anyways, further. It says the Gemara Va'afu Pasach V'Dorish, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah ben Pashtus. Even though others say it's Rabbi Yeshua that started darshaning. So it's a question who it was. Rabbi Yeshua did Va'afu Pasach V'Dorash, and he also expanded the following verse. Divrei Chachoma Dar Bonois. The words of the wise are like a goad to push you, and like nails well planted are the sayings of the masters of the assemblies given from one shepherd. What is this? Why is Torah likened to a goat? What's
a goat?
A goat is a stick that you like, almost not like a whip, that you push the animal with.
No.
In other words, press against the animal. You goad the animal to move, just as this goad directs the cow along its furrow in order to bring forth life on the world. When you're plowing, you get the cow not to stop and eat. You got to keep her moving, right? So
No, she has to go straight so that the seeds will fall
seeds
into.
were planted, correct. After so to the words of Torah direct the students from the path of death to the paths of life. And just like a goad is movable, I may think that the words of Torah, the words of the Rabbanon, their gezeros, their announcements are also movable. They're not set in stone. They're like nails. But just like it nails diminish and don't increase. When you knock a nail into the wall, it takes away a small piece of the wall. I might have thought after that the words of the Rabbanon, in their words of Torah, diminish and don't increase those who observe them, meaning all they do is be strict. It's well planted. Just like this planting is fruitful and multiplies. So to the words of Torah are fruitful and multiply. Bale Asufais, the masters of assemblies, who sit in various groups and accompany themselves with Torah. In other words, they don't learn by themselves, but they argue together in groups. There are those who declare things contaminated and those who say that it's clean. Those who prohibit and those who permit. There are those who disqualify and those who declare fit. How can I learn if there's always arguments? They all take it from one shepherd. Who's that? The Torah HaKadoshah. One Torah. They're only arguing what the Torah means. El Echad Nasta. Hashem gave one God gave them. Hashem, the one God gave us the one Torah. One leader proclaims him from the mouth of the master of all matters. Blessed be him, Hashem. And God spoke all these words. So too you make your ear like a mill hopper, meaning you pour in the grains into the mill from a funnel which is wide on one side, but at the end only one or two come out the narrow side at a time. I
mean, that's this argument, but at the end, from the argument, you come out with the halacha.
In other words, the kanale leid maven, you acquire for yourself a discerning heart, to hear those who say impure and those who say pure, as divrei asurim, as divrei matir, and those who aser and those who matir. There's divrei pesulim, there's divrei machshirin, and all of those who say no good and those who say it's fit. 3b2. Kiloshin Azeh Omalahem, Rabbi Yeshua said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroikin, Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma, Ein Dor Yosim Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Sharu b'Seichel. It is not an orphan generation, the generation that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah dwells within. That's what it called. So here comes with this we're going to end. But let them, why did he have to force them to tell them all these chidushim? Why didn't they tell Rabbi Yeshua immediately the chidushim that they learned in yeshiva? Because of a ma'isa that happened. The Tanya, ma'isa, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi ben Maskis, start with Rabbi Yossi ben Maskis, Shoyakad, Lahakbul Pnei, Rabbi Eliezer ben Lod, I think it's Rabbi Elazar ben Luz. If I remember correctly, it's Rabbi Elazar ben Luz.
Right.
Okay, Rabbi Elazar said to him, what chiddush, what novel learning did you learn in yeshiva today? That the sages had voted and decided that that the lands of Ammon and Moab have to tithe for the poor, have to give Maisa Ani even in the Shemitah year. In other words, when they came and they captured the land, David HaMelech captured the lands of Ammon and Moab, they incorporated it into Eretz Yisrael. But when they were exiled by the destruction of the first base of Mikdash, when they came back, they did not re-sanctify those lands, which were in reality not really part of Eretz Yisrael. They were just added to it. They did not re-sanctify them. If they didn't re-sanctify them, there's no mitzvah of Shemitah. If there's no mitzvah of Shemitah, they said there is a mitzvah of Trumas Maisrus, and yes, you have to give your tzedakah and Trumas and your Maisa Ani even on the seventh year. Amalai, Rabbi Elazar told him, Yosei, Pashit Yadcha v'kebel einecha. Yossi, stretch out your hands and darken your eyes, go blind. Why? Because he said, this was not Paskin today. This was Paskin back in the days of the Alchi Knesset HaGedolah, of the men of the Great Assembly, back in the days of Mordechai and Shimon HaTzadik. It wasn't decided today. And so this Talmud was a real tzaddik. He listened. Pashat, Yadav, Rav Yossi stuck his hands out, the Kiba Leino, and his eyes went blind. And then Bacha Rabbi Elazar, then Rabbi Elazar wept. In other words, now he's going to be mispalo that the punishment he just gave would be removed from heaven. Rabbi Elazar cried and declared, the secrets of Hashem to those who fear him, and his covenant to those who inform them. In other words, that's why in yeshiva today, they didn't know that the Knesset HaGedolah already said this about the lands of Ammon and Moab, and so they came to it by themselves because to reconstitute the law. Amalai, then Rabbi Elazar said to Rabbi Yossi, go and tell your colleagues, do not fret about your voting, that even the Kach Mekavanim Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, because I have received from the tradition from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Sheshama Mirabba, you heard from his teacher, Rabbi Mirabba and his teacher from his teacher, Hilchus Moshe Sinai, it's as clear as an halacha Moshe Sinai, Ammon and Moab Ma'asim Ma'isa Ani B'Shvius, that Ammon and Moab have to give the tithe of the poor even on the seventh year. My Tom, what's the reason? The people coming up from Mitzrayim in the first conquest of Eretz Yisrael captured a lot of lands, and therefore they were considered part of Eretz Yisrael during the first era, during the first base of Mikdash. But they were not captured and conquered again from those who were coming up from Babel during the second conquest of Eretz Yisrael by the second base of Mikdash. Because those lands were only made holy for its time, not forever, because they were not part of Eretz Yisrael proper. And those who came up from Babel left over some lands unsanctified, so that the poor people will have something to rely on for produce in the seventh year. 3b3. Tana, it says, right here. Tana, it's now 10 o'clock, we're stopping. Tana, after Rabbi Elazar's mind became calm, Omar, he said, that the eyes of Rabbi Yossi should return to their former state, and they went ahead and he saw again. Very good. This is exactly where we're stopping. Baruch Hashem. I think